All right, y'all, welcome back to Really Good Soup. And we got some peak to talk about. We got the chapter 1169 right really quick before we get into it. You know, if you guys have been enjoying these reviews slash recaps, what have you, please let me know. Throw me a like or a subscribe or a share, possibly. And, let me know what you think about this chapter too. You know, I could talk about One Piece forever. So, yeah, let's just dive right into it. Right off the bat, we got one of the best color spreads I think I've ever seen from Oda. It's the fucking Rocks Pirates just looking fucking clean, all in their formal outfits. You got Rocks, just absolute fucking aura farming right there with the tiger. Got my boy Whitebeard, got Stussy in hand. We got Big Mom also just enjoying what looks like to be a cake. Classic. And, we got all the other Rocks Pirates who aren't as important that are still looking pretty clean. Honestly, 11 out of 10 color spread Oda. But yeah, let's get into the chapter. So yeah, chapter 1169, My Death Cannot Come Soon Enough. Kind of is a pretty funny differentiation from what the original title was from like the fan translation. Like the fan translation, they said, I have to die now. Like my death cannot come soon enough. That just like feels a little like heavier. But yeah, we start off the chapter like not too long after we had Shanks and Kaban's conversation back when the flashback really started. They're still chumming it up. Shanks finding out about Ace's existence through Gaban, and Gaban finding out Ace's existence through Garp, which like I gotta wonder how many times has Garp crossed paths with Gaban since Roger's death? Gaban is like the one that's like out there traveling in the seas, unlike Rayleigh. He's just like chilling with Shaki over on Sabaody. So I guess it would make sense that at some point Scopper had to have like run into Garp. But it is kind of funny that they're like when they do meet up, they're still pretty like chummy from like back in the old God Valley days. Notably, Shanks is saying that like he's amazed that Ace survived the Navy search because, like, as we know, his mom did not survive the Navy search. Really, just like hammers in just like how significant Ace's like birth was, and even more so like later in this conversation when Shanks, he kind of looks at Ace as like a younger brother now, and he aspires for Ace at least to be the next pirate king, which Scopper quickly reminds him like, hey, it's not like a hereditary thing, and to place that much like expectation on somebody, it doesn't always prove to be like fruitful in the end. And we kind of saw that with Ace, like the amount of burden that was placed upon him just being Roger's son, like right from the get-go, from his birth. We saw his like flashback, he used to just like absolutely hate like just being even related to Roger. Granted, it wasn't like such a high expectation for him to be the next pirate king. It was more of just like a condemnation, just like, oh yeah, you were like the child of like one of the more quote unquote evil people in history, according to everybody else. Yeah, it just like it's fun to get a little bit more perspective on just like what the Roger pirates like how they felt about Ace in general. And it kind of adds a little bit more weight to just like Shanks arriving at Marineford late to like prevent Ace's demise. Anyway, before we move on to the next thing, one other thing that I thought was fun was like Scopper's like confirmation that yeah, you and Buggy like were actual sons to us, which like makes sense obviously for Shanks because they found him as a literal baby. Also, like I'm really like curious to see now like what how the crew viewed Buggy. Like if they really revered Shanks or like Buggy in the same way they revered Shanks, I have to imagine we're gonna be getting a little bit more like Buggy lore soon, which like the Buggy stocks only go up. You know, let's move on further into the chapter. We cut back after that little friendly conversation between Shanks and Gaban. We cut back to the tragic scene happening at Aura's castle. We see Harald just like actually just starting to slice and dice his men just completely reflexively now. So he's starting to notice that Emu's orders are now more or less happening subconsciously, in the sense that like, okay, this does not fall in line with you forming an army, like you like asking your men to chain you up. So instead, I'm gonna kill your men, or at least you're gonna kill your men. And like you see, like Harald's not only starting to accept like what's about to happen to him, but also just like experience like the massive level of shame that the rest of us readers, Rox, Loki, a lot of people have been trying to hammer into Harald. He's finally feeling all of that in like the most tragic way possible. Just him ending the lives of his own men and now having to one soil his reputation forever for the sake of Elbaf. It really is a shame to see, but at the same time, that this is what the readers have been feeling. And like I also see people online often like just shitting on Harald. Like it's one thing to have like a poorly written character, and it's another thing to have a character that's like clearly flawed, but still somewhat complex, still maybe naive. Like I still think Harald is a pretty great written character. Like I could totally see why he's doing the things that he's doing, especially when like you think back, like he used to be the brute that like everybody wanted him to be until he met Ida. But at the same time, as we're gonna see later in this conversation between Shanks and Gaban, yeah, like there are very clear signs that Harald should not have trusted the government, and his best friend tried to tell him. Shanks was about to try to tell him. Loki almost certainly tried to tell him, and he just refused to listen. It's like it's one thing to say like this is a bad character, a bad written character, and another thing to just disagree with the character. But yeah, no, I don't think he's a poorly written character by any means. But yeah, that's anyway just my 2 cents on that. We finally catch up to another point when the flashback started, when Loki and Jarul bust in and they see all of his men just like skewering him. And Harald, obviously, now that he's taken part of Emu's God's Knight's powers, he's regenerating. He's not really even feeling any of this. And in return, he is just wiping away all of his men. Like, just they have no chance against him, And Harald like knows that. He's like, please, guys, you have to run for your lives. I'm immortal. I'm about to like kill all of you. Please run. Then, we cut back to Shanks and Gaban, where Shanks gives us a little bit more detail about how the covenants work. Like the shallow covenants, we see they work. We originally thought they were just more like a symbolic thing, but like now we're seeing like, okay, you'll still probably get a little bit of like the power, but the main like thing that makes it shallow is that it only works when you're basically in Marijois. A funny thing that like Shanks like kind of notes here is like I don't know if Shank necessarily knows what Emu is or like what he looks like, because he only refers to him as this great one, and because he never says the word like Emu, and Gaban and all of them, they still aren't entirely aware of this Emu. Like it makes me kind of just like wonder just like if Shanks had just like stayed for like basically another day, he could have been manipulated into getting the deeper covenant, because at that point you're already in Marijois, and if you decide to like show any sort of sign of like dissent, Emu could just be like, no, actually you're gonna take that deeper covenant, which Shanks kind of talks about a little bit further, saying that like if Harald were to even agree to the newer covenant, like the deeper covenant, Emu would for sure just like abuse that to no end. Which is kind of funny that Shanks is able to clock that maybe like a year being with the God's Knights, and yet Harald was never able to clock that even when Rox was constantly telling him like, hey, they're gonna fucking enslave you. Don't like trust them by any means. Yeah, like Shanks himself was like, thankfully we were able to get out of the Holy Land. We were able to get out of Emu's range, and we had a chance to talk freely. And that's when Harald had said, like, okay, I'm probably about to get that deeper contract. But Shanks is like, you probably don't want to do that. Cut right now in Elbaf. Harald got that deeper contract. Shanks, too late to, try to convince him otherwise. And now Emu's already, like, taken a hold of him. Which, to be fair, I can understand why Shanks isn't a little bit more urgent to, like, stop Harald. Who would have thought that Emu would have just been like right off the bat the second Harald got back, be like, okay, Harald, get to work. Like Maybe it's also on Shanks for kind of just like not expecting Emu to just like work fast right after instilling that deep covenant. You know, to each their own. Everybody makes mistakes. Harald far more than anybody else here. Cut back to the scene in Aura's castle, and like the rest of this plays out. I'm just thinking, poor Loki, because like Loki, he's like on the scene right now. He already doesn't like his dad. He's like, bro, what are you doing here? You had just imprisoned me for burning down the village of the people that killed our mom. What the fuck do you want from me? And all of a sudden, Harald is just like swinging at him. And he has this monster strength all of a sudden that killed all of his men around him. So it kind of makes sense that Loki's just like, what the fuck is happening, And all of that anguish, we are also seeing in Harald. Like they finally pin him down and they make Harald explain himself. And Harald is just like, dude, I made a terrible error. I get it. I made the mistake. I fucked up. The world government, they were never planning on honoring their word. My boy Rox was right, even though he didn't say that. Loki probably knew, like, dude, Rox was telling you this shit the entire time. But yeah, he also goes to tell, like, also, and on top of that, I've been doing some shitty things for the world government, like probably alluding to the fact that he was just like chilling out in the Florian Triangle, just taking out pirate ships for a while for them. So as he's like, giving his sorrows and not, he's also proclaiming like, okay, now we need to secure Elbaf's future. You need to, one, tell everybody here what happened today. Tell them that I like killed my own men. Tell them I got tricked by the world government, that I was just like a deadbeat dad, all of that. I added that last part. He was a deadbeat dad, but he was a fool of a king, and he like his actions are about to make Elbaf suffer. So he wants Loki to pose as the hero that saved the day and become the next king of Elbaf. So that's one thing. And then he also wants Loki to eat the devil fruit that Elbaf is like sacredly protecting, and also wield Ragnir, which will bring me to like the more fun part of this chapter, like in a little bit. But right after Harald finally asks Loki of these things, we see like something snap, and we realize now old Harald is gone. There is no like loving father there anymore. There's now just the mighty warrior, rocks level giant, and he immediately just kills like everybody around him outside of Jarl and Loki. And his men, they try to stop him. He's got the regen factor now, and he's also just straight up just like, now I'm here to serve Emu. So as he starts taking out his men pretty brutally, I might add, we get a one panel, or two panels rather, of Harald just walking up on one of his men and just straight up stomping his feet into the ground. That's just like, god damn, Harald. Like, all of this happening, Loki, he starts to question, like, dog, why do I have to eat a devil fruit? Aren't I gonna, lose my ability to swim? Which, that apparently seemed to have some bearing on Loki, because, his idol Rocks didn't have a devil fruit, and so he was probably just like wanted to follow in his footsteps, and now he can't exactly do that if he's not able to swim. All of that is kind of undercut by Harald's switch of personalities being just like, actually no, I'm gonna eat the fruit even though I just told you to eat the fruit like 5 seconds ago. Loki like still not registering that his personality has completely shifted. And it's kind of fun to see Jarul in action now. Like we see him stop Harald and like try to stall time for Loki to get the devil fruit, and we finally see how Jarul gets his famous wound with the sword going through his head. And it's also, we get another cold line from the emu possessed Harald being like, hey, that's the blade that you gave me. You can have it back now, which I thought was kind of funny that when emu, possesses you, you also get jokes. I think that is just a little fun touch from Oda. But yeah, Harald, he stabs Jarul, and he makes for the devil fruit that Loki's hopefully going to get to in time. As the chase begins, Shanks and Gaban, they arrive on the scene. They deal some pretty, I would imagine, heavy damage if Harald wasn't immortal at the moment, because we see some blood being spurted out, but don't necessarily see any Conqueror's hockey being used. So I don't think Shanks is launching his commissary here. But funnily enough, too, they pull up to Jarul, and Jarul delivers his classic, "Oh yeah, my helmet, stop the damage," which I do love that, like, he started doing the gag just immediately. But yeah, Gabon, Shanks, they review the scene. They have a good idea of what's already taken place. Shanks especially, and Shanks is just like, "God damn it, man!" And it's like even Harald knows that Shanks knows what's going down because Harald is just like, "Yo, Shanks, this whole immortality thing, it's fantastic. You should probably try it sometime." And Shanks is like, "Damn it, he's already too far gone." Meanwhile, Loki, he finally arrives in the chamber. We see the little shot of him like standing over the treasure chest, which we didn't entirely know who it was way back when we first started the flashback, but we now have it confirmed that it is Loki. And we also see, Ragnar is right behind it, which like before, like it was like kind of blocked out by some like you know effect, writing and like some speech bubbles. But yeah, apparently Ragnar was here the entire time. And funnily enough about Ragnar, it appears to be sentient, which I can only assume means it has like a mythical zone kind of thing going on that's like already imbued into it. Because, there's not enough mythical zones in this series, right? But yeah, I'm very curious to see one, like what's about to happen here with Ragnar, and two, what this devil fruit is, because we still have to, we still have that mystery of like what those claw marks are in Aura's castle, because like something had to have created them, whether it was Ragnar or if it was Loki himself, or I don't know if somehow it ended up being Harald. But yeah, it's a pretty solid chapter. I would give it like a 11 out of 10. Like it was pretty much just like wrapping up some loose ends that like we had seen earlier when the flashback started, and like we had cut around to a little bit, and then we went into our little history lessons, and then we came back, and now we started cutting back and forth between those conversations and what actually happened that day. So now those plot threads finally together. I think now we should now like be actually closing in on the flashback. I don't think at the end of this year, probably. I've honestly, like, given how much is happening right now, there's still like the matter of like how Loki, ended up and like getting captured by Shanks, because it didn't happen right after this. It happened like what, 6 years, or like so it happened 6 years before the story started. So it happened like what, 8 years after this. So something had have to have happened between that time that I'm sure it won't entirely be like another like 5 chapters or so. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of explanation between that and when we finally get back into the present. But yeah, pretty solid chapter. Honestly, like in terms of like tweets go, like pretty much everybody echoed the same thoughts this chapter. A lot of people, theorizing that this fruit could be related to Fenrir, because like that's was what that it's like associated with Loki. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head. I just know it's like prophesized to be killing Odin. And since Odin isn't technically a character, at least like the Norse god Odin isn't technically a character that hasn't been like integrated into One Piece yet, I imagine it's gonna have something to do with what this devil fruit is. Because, we also have the existence of the god Elbaf, which Dorian Brogy mentioned several times during the course of Little Garden. So I have a feeling that is what that devil fruit is. Like it's like whatever the god of Elbaf is, that's what it is. And maybe only that god can control Ragnar, or has like any dominion over whatever the Ragnar's potential devil fruit is. So yeah, let me know what y'all thought about this chapter. But yeah, till next time.